Okie dokie, folks. Welcome back to this episode of Monday Night Shaw. I have a brand new webcam and stuff, so hopefully the video quality is a little bit upped. On this week's episode, I have a mainstay from Monster Pro Wrestling, which is one of the very few wrestling companies that I've never wrestled for in Alberta, but is one that I absolutely appreciate and have all the love in the world for. And the man I am talking about today is one of their longest tenured wrestlers on their roster. And I am, of course, speaking about Wrath. Wrath, how are you doing today, buddy?
What's going on, man? Doing great. How are you?
I'm good, bud. Let's like again, like you say, like I say, I know you from Monster Pro Wrestling. Is that where you got your start?
Actually, no. So I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I got my start. So we're going to go back in a little bit of history here, and we're going to go back to like the year like 2003, 2004. Now, if you're familiar with Atlantic Pro Wrestling in the independent scene, you might have heard of a tournament that they held every year called the Maritime Cup.
Okay.
So I went to the very first Maritime Cup in attendance to check it out. Now, I've loved wrestling as a kid. My grandfather brought me up on it and everything. So I remember watching it through the 80s and 90s and just watching the Attitude Era and absolutely adoring it. But I went to this show with a friend. Her name was Amy. And when we got there, we got to see a lot of the up-and-comers that were there. We got to see wrestlers that you probably would have heard of in the independents, Scott Savage, Brody Steele, Cowboy Mike Hughes, Wildman Gary Williams. And the final event for the Maritime Cup was Cowboy Mike Hughes against Bobby Roode, who we all know as Glorious Bobby Roode, and from his tenure also in TNA with the Canadian hard-hitting team, right? This Canadian Enforcer. So I was at this show, and I was sitting beside a skinny guy, and his name was Devin Chittick. And Devin Chittick, at the time, was running Mainstream Wrestling, and he had opened up school. And Mainstream Wrestling that year had gotten an award for putting on the most shows in Atlantic Canada because he was wrestling weekly at a pub called Doolittle's in Dartmouth, which was on the other side of Halifax, of the bridge. So I talked to him. He gave me his information, his email. It's like, yeah, I'm running this wrestling school if you want to check it out. He wrestled under the name X-Ray Kyle Cruz at the time. Okay. And then I kind of lost touch. I was in college. I was doing my studies and everything like that. Funny thing, a few weeks later, this became a full circle culmination in that I was standing in a Blockbuster. And he was 2 aisles down from me, and I recognized him. So I went over to, you remember me, we were from this, and then we started chatting a little bit and says, hey, actually, that bar over there is where I do my weekly shows, and that's where I run my school. We are actually starting a class this Wednesday, first class, tryout, if you want to come. So I showed up, and they beat the hell out of me.
Yeah,
they really did. It's probably my problem because near the end of the night when we did a lot of physical training to the point that we were like sick to our stomach, getting us into that mentality of how physical and athletic wrestling is. And he, at the end of the night, I was the dumb one. And I said, so when do we get to chops?
Oh boy.
So they chopped the living hell out of me.
And they don't let me chop people in training anymore.
They chopped the living hell out of me, man. And I wasn't as big as I was, I wasn't as big as I am now then.
Yeah.
And like college guy, not eating a lot, obviously not having a very great workout routine. But I went home black and blue, and I showed up the next night.
Yeah.
And after that, they were like, "You're back." I was like, "Yeah, I'm back." And we started training. So I started training with Mainstream Wrestling, which fed into their promotion. So it took a lot of time. It took me some time to kind of like get it. But also, I wouldn't say that my training was finalized. So we fast forward to 2006, 2007. And I was with Mainstream Wrestling for a couple of years there. And then Gary Williams opened up his school, Wildman Academy. And that was in Halifax. So me and some friends were like, we're going to check this out, get some more training in. And I went over there, and Gary gave me a lot more insight into the business and everything. Unfortunately, because of my career, I wasn't able to make a lot of the training. I wasn't able to make a lot of the commitments, but I made as much as I possibly could. And then after 2007, I had gotten back and I got back into it. And I started really, really having fun with it. Then my career transferred me to Edmonton, Alberta. And then I was talking with Gary. I was like, is there anybody there that I should talk to or get into training? He put me in touch with Massive Damage, Sean Dunster, who's now one of my best friends. And I called him, and I was at the first Retribution that they did, which was the tribute show that they do every year for the Ripper, Trevor Grimolson. And it was the first ever one. I had a 6-man match and then a battle royal, and then I started training. And that's where it started fitting together. That training with the psychology I received from Sean, along with a lot of the getting the bumps down properly and just thinking on your feet. So I really thank Sean for actually doing that and giving me that twitch. And now, after 20 years of experience with it, obviously, I can go into a ring without calling anything and get it done. And I was with Monster Pro Wrestling ever since 2008.
Yeah. That's I think that's a really good skill to have. I mean, it's super daunting. Like, I'm definitely not anywhere near as experienced as you are. But like I did I've wrestled Dead Zone a number of times, and I walk up into him and the first time we're wrestling and I say, "Hey bud, we're wrestling tonight. What do you want to do?" And he goes, "You know how to wrestle. I'll see you out in the ring." What? Okay. And then yeah, from there, like, I had a background in like improv theater, right? Like doing like improv shows. So I just was like, okay, well, I'm just going to obey the rules of improv and take it about there. And I mean, it was interesting for sure. Like, there was moments where I was like, okay, if I don't actually do something to him, I'm just going to be getting my ass kicked the whole time. So, you have to kind of fight back a little bit. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for
Yeah,
sure. But
definitely.
whereas most people nowadays, like, yeah, I found that everybody wants to plan almost everything.
Yeah, like I've seen that, and I've seen guys who would just want to plan from start to finish. They want to get all their stuff in and everything like that.
Mhm.
You don't really need to, as long as you tell a story. When you tell that story, you can have people eating the palm out of the palm of your hand. As if you're entertaining, if you're charismatic, you can have a blast. Yes, the moves matter. Yes, the chain matters. Yes, the performance matters. But being
Mhm.
so interactive with your fans, being so interactive with the audience around you, can make such a huge difference. That's the biggest thing. And then telling that story psychologically to get them either behind you or ahead of you and hating you, right? So that was something that needed to be instilled in me, and it was drilled in me. It was drilled in me hard, right? Like, I've had my good days and my bad, but that was drilled in me hard. And ever since, it's been just an absolute like gift when you get into the ring, you do that. And it's funny that you say Dead Zone did that, because I've done something like that a few years back. We had a wrestler with us. You probably know of Rick Jules.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So
tag
yeah.
team partners with him in
Yeah, Rick
RCW right
Jules.
now.
So
Yeah.
Rick Jules, Rick Jules had the strap at the time, and I had a championship match against him. And we were sitting in the back, we were sitting there, and we were just chatting it up. And I just looked at him and was like, "You want to be the bad guy? I'll be the good guy." Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. And we didn't call anything. We did that whole match. Like, we went in there and we did everything in the ring. And everything, except for one little slip bump, went so well. And we told such a story that everybody was behind us and everything. When I say slip bump, is that we had a kind of like a vinyl mat at the time,
Oh, okay.
canvas. And there was part of it where it got wet. So I
Oh,
came
that
in to
sounds
hit him
rough.
with a clothesline, and we both kind of slipped when we connected. Man, I hit him so hard. I hit him so hard with it. He drops down. I'm like, oh yeah, he got hit hard, and I covered him over. I'm like, are you okay? And all I hear is, what? What is where? I'm like, oh no, and this isn't the finish. So I went 1, 2. Oh no, he kicked out. It was so funny. It was so funny, but we were telling the story and we were having so much fun with it. And in the end, and it was one of the best matches that I had. Just by doing that. And I've done that several times since. It's just like, there's a couple things, like, you can plan a few things, like more intricate sequences, and practice it obviously with guys that have never done stuff like that. Like, one rule of thumb: never do something that you've never done in training. Never do
Yeah.
something that you've never
Yeah.
done in training. At least do it in training so that you can like get the bugs out, make sure that it's good to go, make sure that you're physically capable of doing it, and also to like make sure that you're not going to kill the other guy with it, right? And it was just so funny that when you see guys and they're like doing all this stuff and everything, and it works when you're starting out. Yeah, talk about it, plan stuff out, practice a little bit and everything. But for me, for this is me personally.
Mhm.
Personally, I will talk about a match. We will go through it and everything. Maybe go through it once or twice, but I can't go through it over and over. I get there, and at most, I'll start warming up. I'll start stretching. Maybe I'll do some chain with the other guy to get into my body, and that's about it. And then I go out there, and we just have fun. Because if you're not having fun, then what's the point, right?
I
This is
completely
supposed
agree
to
with
be
that.
fun, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
it's fun, and that's what it is to me. When I go out there, I just have fun. And I always say, if you're not having fun, then why are you here? And if you don't feel like you're going to throw up every time your music hits and you're standing behind that apron, then you've lost your passion for this business. Because every time, 20 years, every time I'm waiting for my music to hit, I'm standing back there with butterflies in my stomach and I feel my body shaking. And then I walk through that apron and walk through that entrance and it's just gone. And then I'm in the character. And
Mhm.
it's just so much fun to do it that way. But I also respect that guys would like need to talk about stuff and go through stuff. And like, unless it's a big match, you don't have to do a lot of fancy stuff, right? Like if you're second on the card, you don't have to do a 30-minute spot fest.
No.
You can have fun with it, right? Although nowadays, when you see wrestling from the wrestling that I have watched on TV, I do see like certain promotions where every match is just a huge spot fest, and that's what the audience craves. But if you pull something off that makes somebody just go, wow, that's all you need to do. Because I've done a match before where um, we got a huge pop just for body slamming somebody, just
Yeah.
for a body slam. It was huge, and
Yeah.
it was really great to see. So, yeah, either way, yeah, either way, it's just with with wrestling, right? You just want to tell the story, and you also don't want to, what we say, kill the guys that are coming after you. You don't want to kill their event, right? You don't want to be like second match and have and do all this crazy stuff, right? Because then the other guy's got
Yeah.
to top that. You don't need to do that, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I saw there was a match in RCW recently, and the boys
Mhm.
were working really, really hard, but they were like second match, and it was like one guy did a suicide dive to the floor, the other guy caught him and German suplexed him on the floor. I was like, boys, you're in the second match. What are you doing?
Mhm.
Like, like A, you're gonna kill yourselves, and B, like what's left for everybody else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because then what's the finish for the main event? A flying toe hold off the top rope, landing on a chainsaw on fire, and he kicks
Yeah.
out, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I definitely like I can relate to all that. I mean, especially like I mean, for me personally, like, and don't get me wrong, like I don't want to spout any laziness or anything like that. I'm not down for that. But like with me, with the Canadian Goose, people are going to remember the fact that I honk and I have feathers, and that's going to
Yep.
be the most memorable part of my match, probably.
Mhm.
And so I don't really feel like it's gonna be all that beneficial for me to go out there and, like, risk breaking my neck or something doing some crazy stuff, you know? So,
Mhm.
I tend to
Yeah.
just avoid doing it. Every once in a while, you wanna bust something out real cool so people are like, "Oh, yeah, he doesn't suck," you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
but,
if you wanna talk, like, there's guys that will have, like, plenty of injuries and happen. Like, I am fortunate that I've had very few injuries wrestling,
mhm,
because I like to take care of myself, and I have to take care of myself, especially with my career on the outside of it. I had to be, physically able to do my job,
yeah,
and able to do that, and that's one thing in the independents is a lot of guys who are breaking into this. It's like we all have jobs on the outside that if we get hurt and can't do our job, then we can't live.
yeah,
But if you're taking care of your partner, you're taking care of yourself, and you're telling that story, that's what matters, and that's what you're having fun with. And you can do these crazy moves. They're great. It's just that there's always a place for them. That's it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% like agree with all that.
Yeah.
I like the fact that like, like when people like when we talk about the match, for me, I'm like, okay, well, what's like the story here? What are the emotions we're like going for, you know?
Hmm.
Like, I wrestled MRB on Thursday, and
Hmm.
he's like the best guy in Alberta considered to be. And I'm absolutely considered to be pretty much the opposite of that. And so, like, I was like, okay, yeah, you can tell while you're watching it that I'm kind of struggling and that, I'm tentative on a few things, but like that made sense for the story and whatnot. And,
Hmm.
so like he asked me, he's like, well, what moves do you want to do and stuff? And I was basically like, well, you know more about wrestling than I do. So like, these are a few of the moves that I use, but like, I really just am more so I want to tell a good story out there and make sure that our match gets over, you know?
Yeah, and Michael Richard Blaze, like I've only met him a couple times, so I can't say that I like know him personally, but I watch him and so talented, so phenomenal, and everything like that. And I do watch, and he's with the Top Talent Training Academy, correct?
No, not anymore.
No,
Now
not
he
more, not
does
anymore. Yeah.
Clandestine Wrestling Society.
Clandestine Wrestling Society. Thank you. And he's and being a trainer for that now, and where he's gone in his career thus far. Like I remember seeing him just popping on Raw one day, and there he is. And
Yeah.
seeing this career that he's had is great, and watching him at other independent shows and everything like that, and ones that I've worked with him on, um, he is a phenomenal, talented worker that's got ahead for this, right?
Mhm.
And so he knows the same things that I do. It's like he knows to tell the story, but he could definitely throw in those fancy moves once in a while, if he chooses to. And he also understands is like the guy that I'm working, if they can handle these or whatnot, right? And also their level of training of what they need to do if they're going to be able to handle it, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, like I remember. This past Saturday, I was with Best Entertainment Wrestling up in Redwater,
Oh, solid. I
and
got a match coming up for them at the end of February.
yeah, and they were and we had a show with them and in Redwater, and I wrestled against Dean Richter. And Dean Richter and I go way back. We go
Yeah,
way back
he's
a
solid.
number of
I
years, right?
I
That's
love
what
wrestling him.
that's what I was about to say. Such a solid guy. I had a great match with him. We told such a good story. He was a vicious heel. He needed to be because I'm bigger than he is, and we were able to tell the story. We had the fans eating out of the palm of our hand through it, and it was just so fun to watch. We didn't even need to do much, but we did like some cool moves that just appeared out of there. He hit me with this missile drop kick that was just fabulous, fabulous. And I will give credit where credit's due. I had a great match with him, and I wish that it was filmed to put on a reel because it went so well. I really enjoyed that match. That show was pretty solid, top to bottom. And with such workers as like there's Sage, Cat Von Heath, Bobby Sharp, Massive Damage, Dean Richter, T.Y. Jackson, the Wild Boys. There was a lot of talent on that show, and it was really good to see Prankster Pete, who I saw starting training,
Mhm.
and that guy is helping train students now because of how dedicated he is and how he gets it and how well he is. And he also understands you never stop learning. These are guys that this is why I love watching and seeing more of the independents, because you see them progress and go up and see where they're going to go in the end. It's so phenomenal to watch. So yeah, that's credit where credit is due for that. And yeah, same with that show, but I'm going to be on the Death Tour with who was also at the Red Deer show as Levi Knight,
Oh, yeah.
in the Redwater show, I mean, and Sage and Massive and Prankster Pete. We're all going on this together, a bunch of us. We have a bunch of guys coming on this for the 2 weeks, and surprisingly, even through it's my whole career, because of what I did before, and I did not have much time for wrestling take off, especially for 2 weeks straight to travel the Manitoba ice roads. This is my first official full death tour. I've done a mini one with Tony Cadello, but this is my first big death tour that I get to do.
Are you looking forward to it?
Oh yeah, of course I am. It's a so the documentary from last year, was released, and it premiered at Slam Dance. All of them, Levi Day, Levi Knight,
Mhm.
Sage, and the Matriarch, and Massive Damage, Sean Dunster, all went down to Utah, and I took over the school for the week while they were at this premiere with Chris Jericho and Tony Condello at Slam Dance. And the reviews have been phenomenal. I can't wait to see it myself because it tells the story of being on one of the hardest traveling tours in Canada, in Canada's wrestling history for the past 40 years. And so many great names have been on this tour. Chris Jericho, Adam Copeland, Jay Rizzo, Edge and Christian, right? Rhino's been on this tour. Scott Norton was on this tour. There are so many like mainstay wrestlers from the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s that and are still wrestling today that did this tour, and they all consider it like a rite of passage for those who take this seriously and want this as a career. And I'm just really blessed that I am at this point where I get to go on this tour, that I get to experience this tour and go through. And I have traveled the ice roads before. So traveling the ice roads, get through it and have the stories and everything like that. Man, I'm just really, really looking forward to it. And that kicks off that I'll be in Manitoba by February 15th. And then that's when it kicks off, and I'll be back, and we should be finished by February 29th. And then we're coming back. And then on the 2nd of March, I get 1 day off. And then the 2nd of March, back at Monster Pro Wrestling in Edmonton.
Solid, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't seen that the new documentary, but I saw an older one that was released about Northern Death tours, and it looks like all the matches and like the actual wrestling is like such a good time. Like everybody there is like super into it. It looks like the travel is really like painstakingly difficult. But I think that's like you're gonna be with a bunch of like guys and stuff, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so like that can't be like that bad. It just yeah, it seems like a really really like cool thing to me. I mean, it's one of those things where I've kind of always wanted to do one of those just to see like could I survive it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like especially like the crowds look rowdy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since it's up in the like far north reservations, these are places that don't get wrestling live. They don't get wrestling live out there. They get it at one time a year during this death tour for the past like 40 years. And when you're there, I think that there is a quote from the film that's also in the trailer that you hear. And I believe it's in the trailer, but it's when you're there and you wrestle in these places every night is WrestleMania because it's wall to wall packed, and the kids are so interactive there because they don't get to see this. Everybody's interactive. They're standing on their feet. So when I did a mini death tour where we went for 4 days and I wrestled for 4 nights through the reservations, every single show was wall to wall packed, hundreds and hundreds of people, wall to wall packed. And everybody was losing it in these shows. They were just going nuts. They were right into it and everything. Oh man, it is like a feeling. Every time you walked out, yes, there's hundreds of people there, but every time I walked out, I felt like I was wrestling in front of 100,000 people because
Yeah.
they're so loud, they're so into it, and they're just watching how it goes. And it is such an experience and such a wonderful, wonderful feeling that it was definitely a staple in my career to do it. And that's why I'm so happy to go and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, and when the fans are like that rowdy and into it, like you feed off of it,
Mhm.
like you're so much more into it yourself in that like it's like I don't know, I kind of like you try to believe and you're there and you're actually in this situation and yeah, when it's going that nuts, it's just so much more fun. Because it can be hard, like, 'cause sometimes, you are on a show which maybe there's a sparsely attended and maybe some people are not right into it, and it's like, you gotta work really hard to get those people to bite on your stuff, but then, when it's super easy like that, it's like, "Oh, okay, well, we're already 3 steps ahead," you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
And that kind of like falls into so many different aspects of life that I've noticed. Like for example, I've changed careers. I'm an actor now, and recently I put on some productions in Vancouver, and one of those productions that we did was a play called She Kills Monsters. And every night of that play, our theater was full, or it was 2/3 full. It was full, except for one night. And one night we only had like 5 people in the audience, and we still went out there with the intent that we had like 50 people in there, right? And we went out there, but those 5 people were laughing, they were interacting with it, they were absolutely loving it and getting the responses at the points for it, that it was feeding us. So same as wrestling, when the crowd feeds you, you get that little boost of energy and you're like feeding off the crowd. You want to go, always let it go, let it flow through you, let your body absorb it, take your time. Like there's so many like iconic moments that you have seen on television wrestling where the baby face is coming back and they stop and they just stare at the audience while the audience is cheering. They're taking their time, but they're taking it in. And that gives them just such a little bit of energy and charisma to get right into it and continue that match and keep going, right? And that's the thing. It's like the show must go on, and you keep pushing with the show. It's so good. It's so phenomenal to feel that.
I actually I wrestled Rick Jules. We had a match in British Columbia, and it was kind of a sparsely attended match. But like the 15 people that were there, they were into it, like
Mm,
really, really into it. And me and Jules, we got right into it too. We beat the trash out of each other. I'm not kidding. We
mhm,
were whacking each other with jumper cables and everything. I took
mhm.
2 shots with the jumper cable. I was like, oh, that was a bad idea, you know.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
But we still did it twice to each other,
Yeah.
and and I just love that kind of stuff. Like I was pretty amped up on that night too. That was the night when I lost the Big West Championship to Rick Jules, and
Mm,
but yeah, those 15 people were right into it. It was wild.
mhm.
So just to go back to the beginning and talk about the maritime wrestling, did you do any wrestling in like Newfoundland? I've had a number of Newfoundland wrestlers on here.
Unfortunately, no. So I didn't wrestle in Newfoundland. The closest I came to wrestling in Newfoundland was in Cape Breton. So when I broke into the business, and it was the first tour that I was a part of. And I was working during the day, and then I was driving at night to the venue and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth constantly, right? So I drove to the venue, got there, and this tour we had, this is the tour that I met Vance Nevada on,
Oh,
and gave me
okay.
some insight as well on like the business and everything like that. And that's also, we had our the other guest, which was Wayne Ferris, the Honky Tonk Man.
Okay.
So I was able to wrestle up in like Sydney and the port and everything like that, and Cape Breton in a couple spots. And then they slowly made their way back down to Halifax, and where everybody was kind of like staying. So that's the closest I got to Newfoundland.
Solid. You mentioned Brody Steele, and if I'm not mistaken, there was like a reality wrestling TV show back in the day were you part of that?
So I was not. I was actually deployed to Afghanistan, but during that was Wrestling with Reality. That
Okay.
premiered on the Fight Network, and it aired in 2 segments. So the first segment was the reality series of watching wrestling and wrestlers and their travels, their day-to-day experiences, and going through. And the 4 mainstays were Rick Doyle, Trash Canyon, Peter Smith, Brody Steele, Cowboy Mike Hughes, and Wildman Gary Williams. Those were the 4 head guys that were doing that. And a number of my friends and people that I trained with were also on the show, people that came into the show and were part of it. And the first staple was just the reality of it and everything in behind. And then the second part of the show was the actual event that they had filmed with multiple cameras to put on television. And Wrestling with Reality was such an impact on so many things. And I remember that there was a bunch of talk shows that the guys were on for it and everything. And they actually just posted a picture of all of them together on their like I believe that Wrestling with Reality was 2008, 2007, 2008. So that's like a near that's getting close to like 20 years since the show was on the air. And it was such a wonderful thing because when it was on, I remember a lot of the wrestlers that were also on the show, friends of mine. I had the Fight Network, so they all came over to my house, and we would just sit and we'd just be having a few drinks while we're watching Wrestling with Reality every week.
That's solid. I remember watching it too, and I figured I should ask you about that because it
Yeah.
did seem like it was a pretty cool group of guys and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, when you came over to Monster Pro Wrestling, what other federations were active at the time in Alberta?
Oh, geez, we're gonna have to go down memory road on that one. But I remember driving. I remember wrestling with Monster Pro Wrestling, and then they had, I believe they were slowly getting like wrestling in Lethbridge at the time, before like right before PPW kind of took it over and everything like that. Um, and we wrestled in Saskatchewan with HIW, which was High Impact Wrestling. And as for the other promotions that came and gone, there was a few. I believe Real Canadian Wrestling was kind of like just starting around or showing up at around that time. But I really stuck with Monster Pro for a lot of it. I didn't go on the other promotions within the city, so I wasn't kind of following them as much as I might have. I was just stuck with Monster Pro at the time, and I was following the Monster Pro schedule as opposed to the other guys.
Mhm.
But there were some other promotions that were running shows at the times. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems kind of like Monster Pro is like sort of that one outlier federation right now where like if you're in Monster Pro, you're not really in any of the other federations in Edmonton anyway. You know,
Okay.
whereas if you're in RCW, you can still go and do Top Talent Wrestling, or you can go do Clandestine or Love Pro Wrestling, and maybe Squig's not going to be jazzed about it, but he also isn't going to like stop you from doing it. Can you explain like maybe the mindset behind like just having an exclusive roster?
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to use a perfect example. Now, we all remember the Rick Rude incident where Rick Rude appeared on Monday Night Raw and Monday Night Nitro the same night, right? That's a huge incident. So, in a way, for a business term, it would be called saturating the market. So you look at this, and if you're going to be like one thing, so if you were wrestling with the Fed, they didn't want you wrestling with any of their other rival promotions, right? They don't get back at the time like when it was WWF, the WWE wouldn't have somebody from wouldn't be wrestling have their wrestlers with WCW and vice versa. Or ECW as well. They would break contract and they would go exclusive to that company because it's the product, right? So that's where it makes sense from the business standpoint point of view, is that if you have a exclusive product that people are willing to come and see, they're going to come and see it, right? If you don't have that exclusive product and you have a talent share, then they'll be able to see you at different shows and they can pick and go to the shows. Yes, that is very convenient for a lot of people out there, but it also desaturates what you bring to the table. That's my opinion on it as well, because from a business standpoint of view, if I were to go and work with every other company in the city at the same time, then not everybody's going to be able to like shell out like $20 a ticket every single week or get the time off of work if they're working nights to come and see me wrestle every night. They're going to pick and choose a show. And it's just different on the saturating of the market, right? So from some points of view, yeah, it's like some people may not agree with it. I get that. Some people may not agree with it at all. I do agree with it because I see the business standpoint of that. However, like with Monster Pro, they've never restricted me from working outside promotions that are outside the territory, right? Outside of Edmonton. So if there was like a promotion that ran in like, for example, BEW ran in Redwater, which is an hour outside of Edmonton. It's
Mhm.
outside the venue range. I went and wrestled with BEW because we have that little talent share in that sense, right? So it's more of a business standpoint that makes sense in order to keep an exclusive product that you want to give out, as opposed to sharing your product with everybody, right? Because Apple's not going to share their technology with Samsung and vice versa, right?
Yeah,
And
I do
that's probably
like.
the best way. Yeah.
I mean, I like. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy to wrestle who for whoever wants to pay
Mhm,
me to wrestle.
mhm.
But um, I do kind of see like the idea behind it, because like, yeah, sure, if you're the MPW champion but you're showing up and you're getting jobbed out in the second match on every other
Mhm,
show, like that's kind of going to diminish your value
mhm.
in MPW. So I would understand why Sean wouldn't want that going on, right?
Mhm. And like I said, it's a very understandable kind of thing. It's like this is something that which makes sense as opposed to just bouncing around and oversaturating the market. In the sense, yeah, you're getting out there and everything like that, but then if you're an exclusive product and you can train with it, plus the benefits that you get training with this place, um, you push forward and you go with it, which makes sense from the business standpoint. And I've always agreed with that in the business standpoint, right? Mind you, I fully respect anybody's view on how they want to progress their career. So any guy that has come to MPW or left MPW or anything like that and wanted to go into pastures to get more wrestling through like RCW, Love, other promotions that are running around in the city, that's no problem. I'm just like, you know what, man? I wish you the very best. I sincerely do, and take care. We can always catch up at times and everything like that. Just and I'll probably see you at other shows. Just enjoy yourself and enjoy your career and what you need to do to focus on what's best. But what I will say is that you should also do your best to leave a promotion respectfully, right? And when I say that is like anybody can leave any promotion for any reason at anyone at all, right? And there's always going to be like at times that people like would butt heads or anything like that. Some majority of the time it doesn't happen. People just want to move on with their career and kind of just expand into different pastures. That's fine too. But when it comes down to if you want to leave a promotion, I personally feel that nobody should burn a bridge, say,
Yeah,
right? Like you
I'm
want to expand a promotion. Mind you, people have burned bridges with me in the wrestling business. They really have. And there is people that I have burned bridges with. And a lot of that has been like from either personal experience or from personal opinion or something like that. And it can reduce the business. But really, a lot of the guys that have come and gone. I don't have a lot of negative things to ever say about them. And even if I did, I wouldn't do it publicly. I always do it
yeah, no,
personally,
no, and I'm
and
not,
we would
I'm
talk,
not-
right? Oh yeah, of course.
definitely
I know
not
you're not
trying to
asking
get you
that.
to
Yeah,
say anything
no, no,
about anyone,
you wouldn't.
because
You,
like,
I know you wouldn't ask that. I know,
no.
I get that at all. That's my own like words coming out there because if I had a personal problem with somebody, that's a personal problem between me and them, nobody else. However, yeah, if a guy wants to go off on his career and wrestle for other promotions in order to like progress and get more wrestling out there, by all means go do it, go enjoy yourself and everything like that. But I always say no matter where you go, always remember where you came from in the end, right? And keep that little bit of humbleness to you. Yes, progress, yes, but get to the points, reach for the stars and go to be the best in the world. If that is your 100% goal, I will support that to the year, but always remember where you came from. I remember I came from a very small promotion that was running weekly in Halifax. That's where I came from. And then I got refined out here. And then I'm at the spot where I am. And it keeps me humble. Like I like to help new guys out. I like to tell new guys things. I like to joke around with them and teach and give my opinion sometimes. But I'll never be like, I'm better than you, because you know what? I'm really not. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy who wrestles, right?
Yeah, I always have felt that like gratitude is the attitude, you know?
Hmm.
Like I am so like I've had my differences of opinion with Squig. Like we've fallen out once or twice, but I always like, you know, the man give me the opportunity to do the thing that I love to do more than anything in the world. So,
Hmm.
you know, he's definitely gonna get a little bit of extra grace with me, you know? And I absolutely like I think that it's wonderful that the things are set up the way it is, like BEW. Like when I talked to Claude, I like specifically mentioned because I've seen one of Prankster Pete's matches on YouTube, and I like asked, I was like, "Can I wrestle Prankster Pete?" He
Hmm.
unfortunately told me that Prankster Pete's going to be on tour and he won't be able to be on that show. But you know, I'm hopeful that one of these days at a BEW show or something, I'll get to wrestle with these new guys and we get to have fun with each other, and you know, you come back to the other promotions and be like, yeah, no, this guy was really good and it was a lot of fun and we had a great match, you know, like
Mhm.
I love like the community aspect of everything, and I think that a lot of like the animosity and whatnot is just kind of between the promoters. I don't think that the actual wrestlers are really that deeply invested in interpromotional rivalry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because, like, in the end, not everybody in the world is a wrestler. You're doing like what people in the world, like like what, like 3 to 4% of people in the world are doing. It's the same as like in different aspects of hard earned jobs that are out there that a lot of people uh, don't do. For example, I was in the army for 20 years. So being in the army brought me into a percentage of people that have done it in Canada that a huge percentage never did or never even thought of doing.
Mhm.
So it brings you to that kind of like level of like brother and sisterhood that you can do. It's like we're all wrestlers, we're all working. And that's the same with like promoters. You're promoting, you're doing these big things and you're putting on shows and you're giving a spot for wrestlers to express their art and show it to the world and perform and get noticed and get better and go forward with it, right? So I animosity between promoters, I like to stay out of it, of course, right?
Yeah, me
I don't
too.
I like to stay out of it completely when there's animosity between promoters. And obviously you hear things at different times. I even have stories from like some promoters in Halifax that were really horrible and did really bad things, but also like ones that like wouldn't even pay guys. Like there was one incident with a promoter that I knew where he hired a guy in named Greg Valentino, and he hired this guy in and wouldn't pay him. And Greg Valentino showed up at his house demanding to pay and left with his TV and his DVD player at the time, and
Oh,
left with his TV and DVD player because the guy didn't make any money on the show because he didn't promote it properly, right?
mhm.
So with promoters, everybody has their own business and everything and all this. And when you're going, and if you, I'm not saying names, I'm not doing anything, but it's happened in the past with so many promoters all across the world, right? Is that they would play dirty pool at times, right? And when I say dirty pool, book shows on the same dates that some other promoter is promoting, try and purge talent from another actively try and purge talent from another promoter, or try to defame another promoter through a rumor mill or a like a political like a political mudslinging, right?
Yeah.
So that's stuff that I don't like, I stay out of, I won't do, but I will call somebody out on it personally if I see it happening. And but where it like stands, like if I can speak from like Monster Pro's reference, right? Like currently, Monster Pro and I have always had a wonderful working relationship, a wonderful promotion relationship. I understand everything about the way that it operates, runs, and how we like to promote. And we just promote in advance, and we just do our thing, and we love it. We just do our thing.
Yeah, I think that that's the best mindset to have because like I've like even recently been like, hey, like okay, so this is shenanigans is happening over there. Well, that doesn't matter. We don't need to talk about what's bad going on over there. We need to talk about what's good is happening here. Like let's build ourselves up and worry about making our product better and not try and trash on other people because that doesn't make us better, you know?
Yeah, and again, I absolutely agree with something like that. It's like do your promotion, have fun with it, get with it, and promote your shows. Do what you love, right? Do what you
Mhm.
want to do in the business, whether or like whether or not it's your passion, it's your like loved career or anything like that. Even if like as Bad News Brown would say, I'm just doing it for the booking. Um, just you that's something that I say is like there can be competition, there can be alliances, there can be anything to happen without, because I've seen it happen several times before, like other promotions aligning with each other. Like a number of years ago when we had the Canadian National Wrestling Alliance with Vance Nevada running that, and there was like 6, 7 promotions across 3 provinces that were all part of it, and that's where we did a big talent exchange because it was all under one wing, but they also had the ability to run their own shows. So there's a way to kind of like do it. I don't think that I'm pretty sure like there's going to be no way that the territories are ever going to come back after like with the Fed running the way that it did, because that pretty much obliterated the ability to have territories. But
Mhm.
territories were a great idea, and because you had such a wide range to make this full time. But there's guys out there that are making it work. One of them that pops to my mind right away, Bobby Sharp. Bobby Sharp is so passionate about this business, so phenomenal, so talented, looks great, loves this business, nice guy.
Yeah,
I've
Bobby's great.
known him for so long, nice guy, great guy, and he constantly is traveling and wrestling constantly. Look how many titles he holds right now. What does he have? He's got 7 representative titles right now.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly how
Yeah,
many. I remember seeing the photograph with him of all the belts, and that he was going to
yeah,
be wrestling Ultimo Dragon there, who back in
yeah,
the day had all the belts. And
yeah,
I thought, I think Bobby is fantastic, and
yeah.
I super happy for him. He's getting booked, especially like all over Alberta. Like I
And
don't think there's a company he hasn't wrestled for here. You
no.
know.
And rightfully so. And like the guy is so dedicated. I mean, the guy's come back from 2 possible career-threatening injuries and surgeries, and he's just like I saw him. He's so fit. He's so great. He's so good in the ring, and he's got the psychology down. He knows this business inside and out, and he wrestles it with such a passion and such a love and everything like that, and just keeps going. I really see this guy like constantly see this guy like having a great future and everything like that. And he's definitely out there just kicking ass. And I love him to death. I actually messaged him a little while back because I know he's done the death tour several times. And I'm like, yeah, so we're not stopping off at the gym. So do you want to send me like maybe your workout routine that you did on like calisthenics and everything like that, so I can pick some of that stuff up if there's anything that I didn't think of on the way to do that. And he's he typed it all up on a computer, and he's getting ready to send it to me and everything. He's a great guy. And is very dedicated to this business and seeing other people succeed as well. So yeah, we may not have territories, but we have guys who are pushing to wrestle in all these different promotions all over the place in different areas, constantly traveling, constantly away from home. That's making it work for them and making it their career. And yeah, that makes me happy when I see that. Which is why, again, I'm excited for the Death Tour, because it's 2 straight weeks and wrestling every night. Right?
Mhm. You mentioned earlier that you've recently got into acting.
Yeah.
Has any of the skills that you've learned in acting school helped you with your professional wrestling?
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of things from like, so I spent 15 months in an acting school, which really, really expanded my mind and brought so many levels to me on what I can do and what I can be and how to present that. And that what wrestling really is performance arts, right? It's stunt work. It's us putting on one hell of a show. It's acting, it's stunts, it's pyro, it's everything, right? So all of this through transition in acting and a lot of the skills that I was able to pick up there has made things more improved. It helps me get into my body. It helps me. It helped with my charisma and being able to improvise on the spot and being there if you need, along with your own like interesting phrases. And even there's obviously what's called stage combat, and I had a leg up on that because of my wrestling background, because I knew how to take certain roles and bumps already like that, and being able to do so many things with it. It was an absolute. It was like it's an absolute correlation to bring that talent and meld it in with wrestling. And it was very easy to do and just made me better on that end. And then when you have all the wrestling training on that side, just meld it together. It just kind of like turns it into one oiled machine.
Have you concentrated strictly on like stage performance, or are you trying to get into television and film as well?
So actually, what I went for was film, television, theater, and voiceover acting.
Oh,
And I
cool.
have experiences in all that. And I got a lot of good news this week on a lot of things that are different setups for that. That some of it I can talk about, some of it I can't talk about. But for example, one of the things that I did during the SAG after strike was work for a television series that was approved and could run and everything. It's called Wild Cards, and it's currently airing on CBC and the CW. And episodes are appearing weekly that you could watch on their streaming service, CBC Gem. And I am on episode 5. And it's a very short role. Yeah, it's a short role. It's nothing big or anything like that, but it was big to me because it was one of my first roles in television, and I'm going to be able to see myself. That's how I look on TV, other than the amount of short films that I've done. And I remember in 2016, both Massive Damage and I were on a television series that aired on APTN called Delmer and Marta, a comedy series, and we were wrestlers on the show. And I remember that we went into that audition for the role of the Steamy Brothers, as they were called, the Steamy Brothers. And we went in there for that audition. And so we did the audition for the Steamy Brothers, and they brought us in. They saw our chemistry and everything like that. And we leave. And then a few days later, we both get a phone call. It's like, hey, so we're not going to offer you the role of Steamy Brothers. We would like to offer you the role of the Bull and the Matador, the main villains of this episode. So we went in there with a much bigger role and so much more fun, and had an absolute blast listening and teaching these guys like wrestling and having a blast with it. It was so much fun. And that's kind of like what really jump-started me in acting, because I always wanted to be an actor. And that really jump-started me into this career change when I had the chance. So taking all that into account and everything, and like Wild Cards airs on CBC, and my episode is airing February 7th. That I'm on. Like I said, it's only a short role. Yeah, you blink, you'll miss it, but I'm there. And it's a lot. It was so much fun, like working that and getting that. And I've gotten some more auditions and roles this week. And I'm getting what are called callbacks, which is a big deal because your job as an actor is to land the audition. When you land the audition, you do it, you send it, you're done. And then you're good to like relax, send it, forget it. And then your agent calls you and says, you got a call back, which means that you are in like the top 5% of those auditions where they're like, we want this guy. So they just want to see a little bit more of you. And when you go there, and if you nail that, then you get the call. And it's like, you've nailed the role. It's going to be so great because I have 2 right now that if I do land, I got more filming that I can do in March because I leave for filming a short horror comedy tomorrow. I'm going back to Vancouver to film that, and for a week. And if I get one of these roles, I go back to Vancouver to land in March. But another one, which I cannot say what it's for, I cannot say what I'm doing, I can't say anything like that, which I'm not going to. But I can say that if I land this, I'm going to be spending a month in Japan, which will be cool. A phenomenal experience for me. Right, so I'm going to really enjoy that.
If you end up going to Japan for a month, are you going to be trying to seek out some wrestling bookings? You might as well.
I'm pretty sure just might as well, right? So, like, because my whole dream in wrestling, everybody's like, yeah, I want to get this level, this level, this level. My whole dream with wrestling has always been one thing: to wrestle one single match in Japan.
Oh, really?
One single match in Japan. That is my dream. So maybe I will. I do have some friends who could place some phone calls for me. It's like, hey, this guy's going to be in Japan during this time. He might have some free time to show up and do something, right? And have fun with it. And maybe just show up for like one show or something like that. And then it's like, okay, I showed up for one show and now I'm having an absolute blast with this and doing this, right? It also depends on like your schedule is going to be like when you're away, when you're shooting and everything. Because let's face it, there's long days. For example, this shooting schedule that I just received for this one that I'm doing, I have 2 days where I am on set at 7:30 in the morning and I don't leave set until about 10 o'clock at night. And yeah, and that's like 2 days that are going to be back to back, where it's 7:30 in the morning and 10 at night. And then I have a couple days where I'm just literally there only for 2-3 hours.
And from what I hear, it's kind of a lot of like showing up and standing around and waiting, you know, like there's a lot of hurry up and wait. Yeah. Yep. Do you have like a dream Japanese opponent? And I do see that you're sporting a Jason Voorhees t-shirt there. Is that a dream role for you to play a horror villain?
Oh God, yes. God, yes. I would absolutely love to portray a horror villain. I actually like do cosplay as horror villains. I've done Jason Voorhees, I've done Leatherface, I've done Michael Myers. Funny story, as Calgary hosts a horror convention. We used to host one in Edmonton, and I was a part of it. It was called Dead by Con. That we hosted a horror convention here in Edmonton, but unfortunately COVID took us down. So COVID took us down, and it was only our second year that we were getting to run. And then we had the shutdown happen 2 days before we kicked off that event. So we had to shut down the event. We lost so much out of it. And then it's like, you know what, we're probably not going to be able to do it again. It was so much stress and having that happen. At this point, we could probably definitely run it again. But before that, there was always one in Calgary, the Calgary Horror Con. And that runs every single year. If I can go to it, I go to it because there's so many great guys. I remember being there for 1 year, and one of the guests was Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder was the actor that portrayed Jason Voorhees the most. He was him from part 7, 8, 9, and Jason Goes to Space, right? Jason X. Yes. So Kane Hodder was there. So I had a cosplay of him in part 8. Which I thought was the most visually stunning and terrifying Jason to me, right? Because he was just always drowned looking. He was just a monster at the time. He was built like a
skin's melting off.
Even more. I thought he was even more terrifying than his part 7 one, where he had like his bones sticking out and was just a half desiccated zombie. And I thought it was like phenomenal to see that. I had that.
Part 7 is my favorite Jason movie.
Part 7 is a great one. You have to watch all the extended scenes because they cut those kills down so many times. And if you watch the extended scenes, like how long the kills actually went on for and how grotesque they were, it's like, holy crap, why did they cut them out? Stupid Americans the Stupid American Motion Picture Association that was like, at the time, you can't show this amount of violence on TV or in films, right? That was at the time. And now it's kind of like, we got the movie's Terrifier, right? So, with that, it was, so I was there and I was dressed as him and I entered a costume contest. And during the costume contest, I had my partner with me at the time. Her name was Paige. And, we did a spot because she was an up and coming model and actress at the time. And I grabbed her by the neck and she grabbed both my hands and just with one fluid motion, just lifted her straight up in the air and walked around with her, like the scene from part 8 where he's strangling the actress Kelly O. And he's just strangling her in that scene and dropped it down. And Kane Hodder was walking by to go to his photo booth and stopped and watched it and saw it. And then when I stepped off, came up to me, I was like, cool. You look great, man. And that's when I realized I was taller than him.
That's like one of the things I've heard about him is that he's kind of a little bit short, and I heard that might have been one of the reasons they didn't put him in the Freddy versus Jason. I really like all these horror movies. I love that kind of stuff. So they wanted Ken Kirzinger because Ken Kirzinger was 6'7", 6'8". But then if you see scenes in that, you notice that they have boots with lifts in them, so they made him like 6'10". They just wanted somebody like massively intimidating compared to Robert Englund, who is Freddy. However, I'm pretty more than sure that Kane Hodder would have definitely done the job justice, right? But other than that, I absolutely love like horror movies and everything like that, and I adore them. I do want to be like a horror movie. If I can be an iconic horror movie villain, I'm like, I could die happy. There's something like that, right? So 100%. No, those movies. I even I've kind of like started like, making friends in wrestling, talking about that. Like even Michael Allen, Richard Clark was filming at the Oil Rumble thing last week, and he just stuck the camera in my face and started, he was like, here's a hot take. All the Jason or all the Freddy movies are trash. None of them are as good as the Jason ones. And I was like, oh, I don't agree with that at all, sir.
No, they're their own thing. They're their own thing. Right?
Right, but Yeah, no, we got in like a debate about it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I
Mhm.
didn't realize that other wrestlers liked things outside of wrestling.
Right?
Who'd have thunk?
It-
But anyway, we have gone the full hour here, and like I feel like we could have easily gone for another hour and talked about stuff. Because the one other thing I did want to ask you about, because I'm pretty sure is that you just recently like started wrestling as Wrath. Your ring name used to be Jack Hammer. Am I mistaken about that?
No, so I used to be Jack Hammer a long time ago, and then a number of years ago, I was like, I really need to change this gimmick. I get it, and I understand what the gimmick is about and everything like that, but it got to a point that for me, it's like, I don't like this gimmick. I don't like it. So at that point, there was a promotion in Red Deer, and I do apologize. The name is escaping me, but it's now defunct. And it was a number of years ago. And they wrestled in Red Deer, and Jack Pride was there. And him and I were sitting around and like chatting one day. And then we kind of like came up with this like little idea. So he came up with the group that he still runs, the stable, Seven, and we decided it's like he was already wrestling with he had a female wrestler who was wrestling under the name Envy. And so as he took me on, so we came up with the idea that what if you got a powerhouse and I changed my name to Wrath. And so I changed it to Wrath, and I carried that to Monster Pro as well and turned heel. And that came to fruition that I became Wrath over the last number of years as just this monster in the ring. And I stuck with it. And I was wrestling as Wrath as like, I even wore a chrome Jason mask when I came to the ring, right? Because I love the Friday 13th movie so much. And then I started going a little bit more into my background and my heritage. And I do have Northern Germanic backgrounds into True heritage. And I was like, man, I can easily kind of like promote some more of my stuff, because what makes a gimmick easy is if it's something that you're doing in your real life, right? And who you are. So when Wrath kind of like ended up evolving into this Viking beast, this monster that comes forth from the depths to move forward, and then turning into now a Viking hero, a Viking champion, I was like, damn right, so I can go with this and I can rock with this, no problem. So I absolutely loved the idea. And then I was working at Edmonton at the time, and I found these masks. I was like, these are phenomenal, and the way that they could represent, and that's where my iconic goat horned mask came from, was from
Yeah,
Edmonton.
I think
Walk
that's the
into the ring
photo
every time. Yeah.
where that's the picture we're going to be using for the thumbnail on this one, is the
Yeah.
one you sent me of you with the antlers and stuff. I
Yeah.
think it's a tremendously cool looking mask, and
Yeah.
I'm also a huge fan of like Viking gimmicks and stuff. Like, I won't deny it. Vince Austin is like one of my favorite wrestlers that I know.
Hmm.
I've had tons of matches with him, and I hope I get to have tons more.
Hmm.
I think you guys would be a great tag team. That'd be
Oh, it's funny.
fantastic.
It was funny that him and I were supposed to wrestle at Wild Rose at one
Mhm.
point last year for the Hardcore Championship, but unfortunately, they came to me and told me that he had been injured. So, as to avoid exaggerating his injury, I ended up wrestling against the guy from across the pond. The big cowboy guy. Oh man,
Right,
his name
right.
is escaping
Tim
me right now.
Strange.
Tim Strange. Thank you.
Yes,
And I had such fun time with him. He's a big boy, and I
yes,
had a
he's
fun.
huge.
I had a fun time working with him, and he's such a great guy to talk to. We got along really well, and we had. And also that night, I was watching the matches. So I was like, "Oh, these matches are so serious and everything." And I walked right up to him. I was like, "Hey, man, you want to just do comedy?" And we just had this just out of like head hilarious like hardcore match that just I heard people laughing away and everything like that, and that just filled me with like so joy, because it's also something different from everything else that everybody was seeing the time. Like yes, matches are different. You have like tag match different, singles match different, triple threat different, hardcore match different, but then we just twisted it a little bit different and made it into like just a little comedy match, which just added a little bit of flair, which was really fun. So I really enjoyed working with Tim Strange there. But I was supposed to wrestle Vince Austin that night. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I'm pretty sure that was when Vince's son died, and
Mm.
yeah, so that I can understand him pulling out of those
Oh yeah.
dates
Oh yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And when that happens, like obviously my heart went out to him and everything like that. That's
Yeah,
a tragedy that like no parent should go through. And it happens every day, which is just horrible. And my heart still obviously goes out to them for that. I just remember that I was told at the time that he had a injury that he was dealing with. But also I did see like his status after that his son had passed, and that just like adding on to it. So like I was like, oh my god, this is terrible, man.
yeah.
But from what I know now is that he's doing his best that he can and everything, and things are going better for him. And like I'm not obviously going to comment on obviously exactly how he feels or anything like that
Yeah,
because I
no,
don't
me
know,
neither.
and I don't know, but I do wish him like the best in his career in his life, especially after what he's gone through, right?
I hope that we get get to see you down the road here at one of these Wild Rose or BWs, and maybe we can even have a match with each other. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And yeah, if you ever want to come on again, just let me know, and we'll set that up.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot for having me today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. I'm Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, and I've been here with Wrath from Monster Pro Wrestling. If you want to check him out, I know that MPW does have a show coming on Friday here, but that one, this will not be airing until after that. So, can you tell us when the next MPW show is going to be?
The next Monster Pro Wrestling show will be in Edmonton. After the February one will be March 2nd. March 2nd at the Alberta Avenue Hall. Our usual spot, 7 p.m. Showtime.
Solid, solid. So if you have the chance, I highly recommend you go check it out. Well, I've never wrestled for MPW. I have gone to a bunch of their shows, and it's always a good time.
Definitely, man.
Thanks again for coming on the show, and I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Cheers.